Hi, boys and girls. Hope things have gone well for you this week. We're able to meet with friends a little more. That's pretty awesome. We're hoping in a couple of weeks, maybe 4 weeks or so, that we'll be allowed to meet with our families, all of our families together, maybe in some sort of a church setting, a worship setting. That'll be great to be able to see some more friends and hopefully be able to worship together. I hope you're continuing to pray that that God will just open things up for us, that He will remove this this virus, COVID-19, and that we will just see His good hand work in like healing people, in healing our world. I hope you're praying for that. I know I'm praying for that. Today in our lesson, in our sermon for kids, we're looking at what does it mean to be a good neighbor. So here's what I need you to do for me as we think about this. I want you to describe to me your favorite neighbor. Now, some of you might be new to some of the areas where you're living, but maybe think about a neighbor, maybe just moved, and think about a neighbor that you used to live beside. Who was your favorite neighbor? Someone who lived close by, who wasn't a part of your family, and who was a good neighbor. Okay, so in order to do that, in order to tell me what kind of who's your favorite neighbor, you had to begin to think through, what does it mean to be a good neighbor? So where I grew up in the Miramichi, up above me, upriver from me, my first neighbor was my uncle, actually, and my aunt. And they were good neighbors. I mean, they had four-wheelers, they had a motorbike, they had a pool. Yeah, I mean, we were there all the time. We were driving their motorbike and their four-wheeler and in their pool. Now that makes a good neighbor, right? Knowing that someone has lots of toys and stuff that you can just go on, jump on, drive back in the woods, and just such a great neighbor. Now, below us, on the other side of us, was downriver from us was another neighbor. And this neighbor was my great aunt and my great uncle. So my uncle, aunt lived on this side, and my great aunt and great uncle lived on this side. They were older. Now, this is the kind of neighbors they were. Anytime that my great uncle, he had a little farm, anytime he had to go and cut hay and get it all baled up and load it on the truck on the really, really hot days in the summer, he always called my brother and I. And then he also owned a couple of horses quite often. Usually it was horses that really weren't in great shape. He was an older guy, and a friend of his would sell him these horses that the guy couldn't sell to anyone else. So like a horse with who couldn't breathe well, or a horse who couldn't run well, or a horse who would lay in the field all day and you had to like really force it to get up. So those kind of horses. So oftentimes I'd get a phone call or a call from my mom saying, "Hey, you need to go down and help your Uncle Delbert get the horses in." And that was not a nice job. And they were older, and we burned firewood for the winter. So my brother and I would cut a lot of firewood for them every fall. So those were those kind of neighbors. You might think, and I kind of thought that when I was a kid, that's not a great neighbor to have. Those ones where you have to go down and work for them all the time. These ones over here, these are good neighbors to have. The ones you can like use all their toys all the time. But is that what makes a good neighbor? Jesus talks about, to a young lawyer, what makes a good neighbor. And the lawyer is kind of judging neighbors the same way I am. He's kind of saying, well, how can I be a good neighbor? I want people to consider me to be a good person, a good neighbor. I want to be able to say, yeah, see, God, I'm a good neighbor. Therefore, God, I must really love you a lot. Therefore, God, I must be right with you. That's what this lawyer was saying. But Jesus tells him a story, and you've probably heard the story about the Good Samaritan. And your mom and dad can tell you the story. I'm not going to tell you the whole story, but they could read you the story here in Luke 10. But the Good Samaritan, after traveling down this road, and he sees a man at the side of the road who is really left for dead. He's dying. He got beat up by robbers. A priest went by, didn't even look at him. Levite went by, looked at him, went to the other side of the road, and kept going. He was left for dead. So he's left for dead by more than one person. And then Jesus talks about a Samaritan who stops, who takes all of his goods, all of his time, all of his efforts, lays his own schedule aside, and he serves this stranger that he doesn't even know who's left for dead. He cares for him. He serves him. And Jesus says to the young lawyer, young lawyer, who is the best neighbor? Was it the priest who went by? Was it the Levite who went by? Or was it the Good Samaritan? And the lawyer says, it's the one who showed him mercy, the one who cared for him, the one who made sure he was okay. That was the best neighbor. And Jesus says to him, you need to go and do likewise, young lawyer. The reason Jesus says that is because he knows this young lawyer is unable to be that kind of neighbor. It isn't a matter of, I need to be good to this person and that person. It's a matter of, I need my heart changed. I need a heart that reflects the same heart God has for us. The lawyer knew that he didn't have that heart. And Jesus knew he didn't have that heart. So Jesus tells him a parable to push him towards, lawyer, the problem is not who are you neighboring to. The problem is, what kind of a neighbor are you according to the fact that God has loved you to such a degree? That's what it is. It's a matter of, you don't just try to be good for the sake of being good. Sometimes it's hard to be good. It is a matter of, you know what? God loves me so deeply and dearly. He cares for me. He sees me. He knows who I am. He hasn't ignored me. He sent his son for me. God has been such a great, caring, loving, good father to me that I want to, by faith, grab hold of all that he has for me. And therefore, out of that, you start showing compassion, love, mercy, care to others, like a brother or sister, or like a mom or dad, or like someone you don't even know, a stranger, someone who maybe is panhandling, maybe someone who doesn't have the same color skin you do, or doesn't speak the language you do. That you can show a kind of a compassion and love, not simply because you should, but because Christ has loved you with such great compassion and love. That's Jesus' lesson on what it means to be a good neighbor. I am so thankful that Jesus is the ultimate good neighbor, that he comes all the way from heaven to us who are strangers to him, and he dies for us, and he makes us his friends. Jesus is such a wonderful good neighbor that we should then overflow to be good neighbors to others. All right, that's the challenge. That's one of the things that we can begin to pray for in our own hearts and lives. God, help me to fall so much in love with you that I overflow in love to others. So that's a good prayer this week. Hopefully you'll take the time, maybe write that down somewhere, or do a drawing of that, and just remind yourself, God loves me so much, I can overflow in love for those around me. All right, thank you guys very much. I hope you have a great week. Bye.